Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a quick video on how to paint yellow and black striped cables. Okay, so the first colour that we're going to use for this is Citadel Averland Sunset, which is a great base colour for yellow because it covers pretty much everything. You may get that little bit of streaking if you're on a darker colour, but a couple of layers and it will cover pretty much everything. This guy's been undercoated with Army Painter, I think it's Demonic Yellow or something like that. It's a lot brighter than Averland Sunset. I thought it would be a decent one to use for the video. So once you've got that down, you're going to use a little bit of Citadel Fuegan Orange. And this is just to darken the recesses at the end of the tubes. I'm going to do two slightly different yellows on this, two slightly different tubes. One of them is going to be on Gazgul, and this is on one of the Slave Ogrin for Necromunda. So now we're going to start reapplying the colours. We're going to use a little bit of Citadel Averland Sunset once more. You're just going to reapply the colour, leaving those sections of Fuegan Orange in the recesses. So that you have that nice kind of flat yellow, which is the base for the tube. Next up, we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Yriel Yellow. And this is just to give the tube a little bit of brightness, so you've got a bit more of a highlight colour on there to start with. You can keep the tube as just Averland Sunset if you want to. You don't really need to highlight it unless you want it to be brighter or a different colour, or you want some extra layers of colour on there. But the Yriel Yellow is a nice bright yellow. We'll get that tube looking quite vivid. Not quite as bright as Flash Gitz Yellow, but it does make for some good black and yellow tubing. So with that done, we're going to start with the black. We're going to be using the Vallejo Black for this, but any black will do. And the way you want to approach it is find a section of the tube to start with that's got pretty easy access, so you can get either most sides of it or the biggest area where you've got a clear way to get your brush in. You just want to mark out roughly where your first section is going. So I've chosen a little strip here. You're putting the lines on diagonally rather than straight across. You're kind of dividing that up into sections so that you know where some of the tops and bottoms of those lines are going. And you're going to fill in the middle between two of those lines, and then where the third line is that you've put on, you're just going to use that as the top of the next black segment. Now it does get a little bit tricky when you've got curves and bends in the tube, but as long as you maintain that kind of angled stripe going across it, you should be okay in at least getting it to look like they do connect. Now you'll notice a bit more on this one that they're planned roughly so they might connect when they go around the tube. On the other hand, they might not. But on Gazgul, I do try and paint it so it looks like it is one stripe going around the whole tube from start to finish. And the way that you do that is when you're painting one side of the tubing and you're putting those little marks on with the black, you want to make sure that they are going around the tube at the angle. So if you're looking at the tube from one side and you've got the black line going diagonal across the tube, you want to make sure that when it gets round to the other side that it's going the opposite direction, because that will be going around the tube, if that makes sense. So if you're looking at the tube from one side and it's going, the black line is going from bottom right to top left, when it gets round to the other side it's going to be going from top left to bottom right, because that will represent the tube having the black stripe running around the tube as it goes along from one end to the other, that is. So you can see here as well, what I try and do is plan roughly where those stripes are, even if the tubing is broken up. And so that way, on this it looks quite a bit disjointed because it's got lots of little brackets holding the tube in place, and they do cover some of the black sections on the tube. So parts of it look like there isn't too much there. And all we're doing for this little bit is we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo German grey just to highlight those black sections. But on this one it does look like there's a section where there isn't much of the black stripe showing up on the tube, and that is only because you have those brackets going around it. That's the German grey applied. That is the completed stripy tube on the slave Ogren. Now I'm going to work on Gazgul. I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Averland Sunset once again to put that base colour on. I thought it'd be interesting to try and do one of the orc cables here, because Gazguls are all frayed and have the sections missing from them. So it'd be a good way of showing you how you can get the stripy cable done, even when there is sections missing of it. One good thing about Gazgul's cable here is that you can get to both sides of it most of the way round, so you will be able to see how you get that stripe going all the way round there. So the idea that I use when I'm painting it is to use it as though it is one stripe running the length of the cable. Again, here as before, we're using some Fuegan orange to go around the areas where the cable joins onto other sections or has ripples or anything like that, or breaks in the cable, just to give that a little bit of shading and discoloration. Like so. So now I'm going to be returning to Citadel Averland Sunset. I'm going to be reapplying this colour over the areas where you don't particularly want the shade, and to highlight those areas where the shade is. Also, the second layer of Averland Sunset will lighten it. As you can see, it's gone over a spray of Citadel Lead Belcher originally. So by adding another layer of Averland Sunset, it will brighten that up a little bit. So we are speeding through these initial sections just because it is just painting up the cable to get the base colour and a little highlight on there before we start doing the black stripes. And once we start doing the black stripes, we'll be able to slow this down and show you a bit better. So this time I'm going to use a little bit of Flash Gitz yellow. You'll be able to see the difference between this and the Yriel yellow that we used on the previous one. Thought I'd use a slightly brighter colour on the orcs because I still like doing orcs in the very bright colours that they used to have years ago. So a lot of my orc miniatures have got like stripy pants or patterned trousers and different things like that. Just because I think, despite the kind of grottiness of them, they are a race that you can have a lot of fun with. So again, just doing like a normal highlight like you would on this, so you're thinking about where the light is catching this tubing, so you're not going to do the underside of the tube, just the bits that would be catching the light. That'll give it a bit of a kind of shading from the Averland Sunset areas and the bits that you haven't put this Flash Gitz yellow onto. Okay, so now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Black and we're going to start doing these stripes. Now, because we have the sections of cable missing here, we're just going to start off by doing one section at a time. So again, you want to start by putting that line on, the initial line on at an angle, and you want to take that as far round as you can possibly get it. And then think about where you want the other line. It's going to be the top of the black area, where you want that one going, and just join them up and fill in the gap there. Once you have this little section painted, you've got a choice of either going onto the other side of the cable or putting on the next line on this side. So here we're just filling in that first part of the black stripe. And we're now going to start on the second part of the black stripe, which is going to go here. So the way you want to think about it is each of these sections where you've got the diagonal going top right to bottom left, the bottom left part of that line is going to join with the left hand line from the previous part of the stripe. So it's going to bend underneath that tube and go all the way to join with the left hand side of the previous black section. So an easy way to work out where the lines would be and what they would look like is either to get a straw or get a piece of paper and roll the paper into a tube, and then use a pen or a marker or something like that to draw a thick line going round the tube. Keep rotating that tube and drawing the line until you've got it going end to end, and then when you look at that from the side you'll be able to see how the lines work on the tube itself. So you'll be able to see that the two lines as they're going top right to bottom left as you're looking at it will fold round and go the opposite way on the other side, so that the left hand end is going to join with the left hand end of the previous stripe, if that makes sense. As they will be running around the tube for its entire length. So you can see him working out where this part of the tube goes, and it's going to go around the back there and join onto the left hand part of the previous stripe. And this part is going to go round and join onto the next stripe, which will be a little bit further over. If it's easier and if you've got access to each side of the tube for the whole thing, then you can just do one continuous stripe, as long as you maintain those angles on the stripe, be it 45 degrees or what have you. Then you can't go wrong if you've got easy access to both sides, because you will be able to keep that angle the same and get that going all the way round the tube from start to finish. It's one of the bonuses of doing things in a sub-assembly way. Things like tubing and different stuff like that, you can get all the way around it and paint it up without too much of a worry, because you can reach each section of it. So when it's glued down it does make that a bit of a pain, but as long as you get it looking good on the areas that you can see, and the bits that are slightly obscured, you can kind of get away with it not looking 100%, because they're never closely scrutinized. If it's on the tabletop, you're not going to notice where those lines go, and if you're looking at it closely you can get it to look pretty much spot on by just working your way along it slowly. Now it does take a bit of time to do the stripes and to get them looking right, but it is worth practicing so that you can get them most of the time. The only thing left to do is highlight the black a little bit, and for that we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo German grey once again. And you're just going to highlight the top areas of this. Just give them a little bit of a highlight, and then we're finished. And that is the finished cable.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.
If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support us, our Patreon and Ko-fi pages are linked below. Thanks very much.